This video is about the mediastinum. We know that the trunk of the body possesses the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity, which are separated by the diaphragm. So this is the diaphragm, this is the thoracic cavity, and this is the abdominal cavity. This is the thoracic inlet. So the mediastinum, it is the median plane of the thorax in between the two lungs. So mediastinum is the median plane of the thorax in between the two lungs. Before coming to the subject proper, let us have the basic understanding of the structure inside the thorax. This helps to understand about the mediastinum easily. The two lungs are protected by a covering called the pleura. Pleura is two-layered. The inner visceral layer, which is adherent to the lungs, and the outer parietal layer, which is named according to the region in which it is placed. So, this is the cervical pleura, where it is adjacent to the cervical region. This is the diaphragmatic pleura, where it is adjacent to the diaphragm. And this is the costal pleura, which is adjacent to the rib. And this portion of pleura is called the mediastinal pleura. Here lies the heart. This is the heart. It is protected by a covering called pericardium. So the heart lies in the pericardial sac. One of the main blood vessels coming from the heart is the aorta. At first, the aorta originates from the heart. It ascends upward and form an arch. It forms an arch and then descend to the abdomen through the posterior side of the heart. And this arch of aorta have three branches, 1, 2 and 3, to supply the head, neck and the upper limbs. So for the left side, there is the left subclavian artery and the left common carotid artery. So this is the ascending aorta, this is the arch of aorta, and this is the descending aorta. Then the branches of arch of aorta are, for the left side, I have already said, the left subclavian artery and the left common carotid artery. On the right side, there is the brachiocephalic artery, which further divides into right subclavian artery and right common carotid artery. Here we have another structure, the trachea, which bifurcates into right and left bronchus. This is the trachea, and it bifurcates into the right and left bronchus and enter the lungs. And just behind the trachea, we have the esophagus or the food pipe, the azygos vein, and the thoracic duct. And coming to the mediastinum, when viewed from the side, it is seen like this. This is the sternum, manubrium sterni, body of the sternum, xiphisternum, and this is the vertebral column. 12 thoracic vertebrae from T1 to T12. This is the inlet of the thorax and this is the diaphragm. So in between the manubrium and the body of the sternum we have the sternal angle. So from this picture the boundaries of mediastinum are very clear. That is, anteriorly the boundary is the sternum, posteriorly the 12 thoracic vertebrae, superiorly the inlet of the thorax, inferiorly the diaphragm, and on both sides the mediastinal pleura. And for the descriptive purpose, this mediastinum is again divided into a superior and inferior mediastinum by an imaginary plane. That imaginary plane extends from the sternal angle in front to the lower border of the body of the 4th thoracic vertebrae behind. So when an imaginary plane is considered connecting the sternal angle anteriorly and the lower border of the body of 4th thoracic vertebra posteriorly, we get the superior mediastinum and the inferior mediastinum. So the pericardium is seen in the inferior mediastinum. This is the pericardial sac. Which rests on the diaphragm. So the inferior mediastinum can again be divided into 3. The area in front of the pericardium forms the anterior mediastinum. The area behind pericardium forms the posterior mediastinum, and the pericardium and its contents form the middle mediastinum. So coming to the superior mediastinum, the boundaries are very clear. Anteriorly it is the manubrium sterni, posteriorly it is the upper 4 thoracic vertebrae, superiorly the inlet of thorax, and inferiorly the imaginary plane passing through the sternal angle anteriorly and the lower border of the body of the 4th thoracic vertebrae posteriorly. So these are the boundaries of superior mediastinum. And also one boundary on each side we can see the mediastinal pleura. About the contents of the superior mediastinum, we have the trachea, which is coming from starting from the neck. This is the trachea. It goes down to the medial mediastinum. This is the trachea, and reaching here it bifurcates into the 2 principal bronchi and enter the lungs. And just behind the trachea we can see the esophagus. This is the esophagus. So one content of the superior mediastinum is the trachea and another is the esophagus. Then comes the thymus. Thymus is situated in front of the trachea. It is small in infants and gradually enlarges in puberty and then decreases in size. So around here we can see the thymus. And then the thoracic duct. Thoracic duct is the largest lymphatic vessel in the body. It extends from upper part of the abdomen to the lower part of the neck, and it is seen behind the esophagus here. This is the thoracic duct. These are the main structures of the superior mediastinum and the muscles of the superior mediastinum. Now the muscles of the superior mediastinum. We have three muscles in the superior mediastinum. Two of them arise from behind of the manubrium sterni. They are the sternohyoid and the sternothyroid. And another muscle is the longus colli, the lower end of the longus colli muscle. The longus colli muscle extends from the first cervical vertebrae or the atlas to the third thoracic vertebrae. So the three muscles seen in superior mediastinum are the sternohyoid, sternothyroid, and the longus colli muscle. And next comes the arteries. I have already said that the heart, from the heart, aorta arises, ascending aorta, then it arches to form the arch of aorta and then descends to the abdomen. And this arch of aorta is seen in the superior mediastinum. Arch of aorta is seen in the superior mediastinum. So this is the descending aorta. So we can see the arch of aorta in the superior mediastinum. Like this, arch of aorta and its branches. So the brachiocephalic artery, the left subclavian artery, and the left common carotid artery. The next, the veins. The veins accompanying the arteries, they are the right and left brachiocephalic vein, then upper half of the superior vena cava, and the left superior intercostal vein. These are the veins seen in the superior mediastinum. So the second, third and fourth intercostal veins drain into the left superior intercostal vein, and it drains to the left brachiocephalic vein. And here comes the right brachiocephalic vein. Both of them join to form the superior vena cava and drains into the superior vena cava. So these three veins are seen in the superior mediastinum. These four veins are seen in the superior mediastinum, that is the right and left brachiocephalic vein, the left superior intercostal vein, and the upper half of the superior vena cava. Next, the nerves. The nerves seen in the superior mediastinum are the vagus nerve. It goes through the superior mediastinum and then into the posterior mediastinum, the vagus nerve, and the phrenic nerve. It then goes to the middle mediastinum. And another nerve is the cardiac nerves. And the left recurrent laryngeal nerve is also seen in the superior mediastinum, and it has a clinical importance. For the left recurrent laryngeal nerve has a clinical importance. And then comes the lymph nodes. So we can see trachea here in the superior mediastinum. So the lymph nodes seen in the superior mediastinum are the paratracheal and tracheobronchial. Also, the brachiocephalic lymph nodes are also seen in the superior mediastinum. So that's all about the superior mediastinum. Now about the inferior mediastinum. We have already said that it is divided into anterior, middle and posterior mediastinum. So the anterior mediastinum, it is a very small area and the boundaries are anteriorly the body of the sternum, posteriorly the pericardium, superiorly the imaginary plane, inferiorly the diaphragm, superior surface of the diaphragm, and on each sides the mediastinal pleura. And the contents of this inferior mediastinum or the anterior mediastinum are, the first content is the sternopericardial ligament, which connects the pericardium to the sternum. There are two sternopericardial ligaments, superior and inferior, connecting the body of the sternum to the pericardium. And another content is the lymph node and the lymphatics. Then the mediastinal branches of the internal thoracic artery. We know that the internal thoracic artery is a branch of first part of the subclavian artery. It arises from first part of the subclavian artery, the internal thoracic artery. So its small mediastinal branches are seen in the anterior mediastinum. And we can also see the lower part of the thymus in the anterior mediastinum and also the areolar tissue. These are the contents of the inferior mediastinum. And then comes the middle mediastinum. Boundaries of the middle mediastinum are anteriorly the body of the sternum, because there are no clear structure in this anterior mediastinum, so we can say that the anterior boundary of the middle mediastinum is the body of the sternum or the posterior surface of the sternum. And posteriorly, the posterior boundary of the middle mediastinum is the esophagus, descending thoracic aorta and the azygos vein. Here comes the azygos vein. The azygos vein. And on each side, the mediastinal pleura. The content of the middle mediastinum are, first of all, the heart, which is enclosed in the pericardium. Then we can see the trachea, bifurcation of trachea, tracheal bifurcation, and the two principal bronchi in the middle mediastinum. And the arteries. The arteries that come out of the heart, like ascending aorta, pulmonary trunk, two pulmonary arteries. And the veins related to the heart. They are the lower half of the superior vena cava, the right and left pulmonary veins, and also we can see the terminal part of azygos vein in this middle mediastinum. And the nerves of the middle mediastinum include the phrenic nerve, as I have already said, the phrenic nerve, and the deep cardiac plexus to supply the heart, deep cardiac plexus. And the lymph nodes are the tracheobronchial lymph nodes, since the trachea and the two bronchus are seen in the middle mediastinum. So that's all about the middle mediastinum. And then the posterior mediastinum. Boundaries of the posterior mediastinum. We can see anteriorly the pericardium, the bifurcation of trachea, and also the pulmonary vessels, and this region or this portion, that is the posterior part of the upper surface of the diaphragm. So this whole part forms the anterior boundary. So here we can see the pericardium, tracheal bifurcation, pulmonary vessels, and this portion, it is the posterior part of the upper surface of diaphragm. So this forms the anterior boundary, and posteriorly the lower 8 thoracic vertebrae. The lower 8 thoracic vertebrae, and on each side the mediastinal pleura. The content of the posterior mediastinum: one is the esophagus, other is the descending thoracic aorta and its branches, then veins, azygos vein, hemiazygos vein, and accessory hemiazygos vein. They are seen in the posterior mediastinum. And the nerves: one is the vagi, and another is the branches arising from the lower 8 thoracic ganglia of the sympathetic chain, splanchnic nerves. And the lymph nodes and lymphatics include the posterior mediastinal lymph nodes and also the thoracic duct. These are the contents of the posterior mediastinum. So this is all about the mediastinum. Thank you.